Steve Kilbey from The Church here, and you're watching Rage. Here's a bit of a plug for the ABC. There used to be a guy called Chris Winter who unfortunately I believe he recently passed away, and he spoke in a whisper. It's like, here's a track by... And I lying in bed one night listening to Chris Winter because he played the latest music, and he said, here's a track by Hawkwind. And it came on and it absolutely blew my mind. It was from their album called In Search of Space. And yes, at that very moment in time, they were inventing what came to be known as space rock. I rushed out the next day, and luckily in Canberra, I found this record, In Search of Space. It also came with a logbook full of poetry and pictures and sort of, I almost had it memorized. When people say to me, what's the most influential poetry and stuff you've ever read? It isn't really Dylan Thomas or Arthur Rimbaud, it's really the Hawkwind log. If you can track down the Hawkwind log, get it and read it, it's great. I was looking through the ABC archives. The only track they actually have here which we can play is Silver Machine, which was a hit single. It's got Lemmy on the bass guitar and the lead singer. It's got Stacia. They had a sort of a new dancer. Of course, Dave Brock, has been through, the only member of Hawkwind that's been there all along. The Church actually did a cover of this on a cover album we did called Box of Birds. Silver Machine, it's got all these oscillators and synthesizers sort of going all the way through. And it's like you're traveling through space. That's what Hawkwind's all about. It's sort of the feeling, the momentum, the travel. And if you want to, in my humble opinion, their very best album's a double live album called Space Ritual. And between each track, there's these sort of announcements and poems and all the... So that's Hawkwind, one of my favorite and most influential bands ever. Hope you can dig this mess. This might be a bit blasphemous to some people. I see Mark Bolan as John the Baptist to David Bowie's Jesus Christ. Bowie didn't steal very much music from Bolan. He doesn't sing like Bolan. He doesn't play like Bolan. His lyrics aren't like Bolan. But he stole the attitude. And he saw and you can hear this on Lady Stardust, on the Ziggy Stardust album. He's singing about Bolan. Bolan showed the way Bowie could do it. And that's it. He took the attitude, the idea of the sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Androgynous man, a man who's sort of attractive to men and women. I fell in love with Mark Bolan, and I had a poster of him on my wall. And I got all his stuff. I famously once had an argument with my dad, and I said, Dad, Tyrannosaurus Rex, he's a genius, Dad. And my dad said, the only clever thing about that bastard is he can spell Tyrannosaurus. So it was one of those records my dad hated and I loved. There's not all of his stuff, it wasn't available in the archives, but we've got Get It On and Children of the Revolution. But I really think Mark Bolan was an absolute essential guy, and without him, David Bowie might have... I don't think David Bowie would have been as on track as he was. I think he took a lot of Bolan's attitude, and, you know, Bolan really went off the boil after a while. I think drink and drugs and fame and money and stuff kind of ruined it a bit. But for a while, he was my favorite guy in the whole world until David Bowie came along, and I felt a bit guilty when I jilted Bolan for Bowie. Not that any of them would have known what I was doing back in Canberra, but Mark Bolan, absolute character and sort of, once again, an essential character in my world and sort of the music that I've made and enjoyed. The Go-Betweens, one of Australia's finest bands ever. They hit upon the idea of actually being Australian and sort of being unashamedly Australian. A few people, like Skyhawks, a few people had done that before that. A lot of Australians, probably myself included tend to be sort of European or sort of American. The Go-Betweens were presented Australia, and you know, songs like Cattle and Cane and Spring Rain and Bye Bye Pride. I don't know, there's just a kind of a wonderful, unique Australianness to this, a sort of modesty and, oh God, the Stripe Sunlight sound, as they say. They had one of the rare bands that had two lead singers and songwriters who were both as good as each other, and you didn't sort of, when you're listening to Grant, you're not hoping for Robert, and when you're listening to Robert, you're not hoping for Grant. Somehow, like Lennon and McCartney, they managed to, both of them, they both, although they're so different, and yet they're so similar. So like, I hope you like the Go-Betweens as much as I do. It's really wonderful stuff, essential stuff if you're an Australian, so enjoy this. Metropolis video, oh my God, so controversial, so expensive. This video, the video for this cost more than I think the album that it came from. It was like a 3 or 4 day shoot. There was a cast of thousands, and someone had the idea to have a baby elephant in the video, which these days wouldn't fly at all. In those days, some of the people there didn't think the baby elephant should be in it, and they all turned on me and said, well, you're a vegetarian, you tell them we don't want the elephant. And I was like, oh, you know, it's not really up to me. And then the guy who had the elephant said, look, the elephant likes doing this kind of work. I don't know how he knew, but you can still, the baby elephant's still in there. There were thousands of people there, and I think the video cost like $150,000, and that's like back in 1989. So you can imagine in today's terms, huge shoot, kind of a lot of fun. I don't know, whatever you make of this, but here it is, Metropolis. Hi, I'm Steve Kilbey from The Church. Tonight I'll be programming Rage, and we're going to have some Pink Floyd and some Bob Dylan and some Kate Bush and other things like that you probably imagine someone like me will play. So stay with us and stick around, and you're watching Rage. Hello, I'm King Charles III of the royal family. No, that's not a band, silly. But you're watching Rage. Aren't they, Camilla? David Bowie, what can I add about David Bowie? I feel like I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for David Bowie. I'm totally indebted to David Bowie. One of the first reviews I ever got, it said, yes, I was pulling my best David Bowie face, whatever that is. He's had it all. He was the best looking, he had the best image, he had the best clothes, he had the best music, he had the best lyrics. I've chosen a sort of of course everybody, I mean really, what more light can I shed on this, on David Bowie? I've chosen some stuff from each period of his career. Of course, the initial thing, we've got the Genie with the Spiders from Mars, and then we've got his Plastic American Soul period, where he's doing Golden Years, and finally something he did right at the end of his life, Black Star, which is an absolute triumph and full of, the lyrics are there for you to decipher and interpret. Just an incredible mind, and I really can't see anybody else like that coming along for a long time. Somebody who was so good at every single facet of music and performance and entertainment, and probably my biggest hero and my biggest idol, David Bowie. I hope you like this stuff. Sigur Ros, probably my favorite band that aren't all the oldies that you know I'm going to be playing, are from Iceland. I believe they sing in a kind of a made-up language. It sounds like a mixture of sort of Icelandic and English and something else. Every now and then you'll hear some English words pop out. They are, as far as having a spiritual, once upon a time Brian Wilson said, I'm just writing teenage symphonies to God. And I feel that Sigur Ros have picked up this mantle of having spiritual music. And I think the fact they don't have lyrics as such that we can understand really helps. Sure, that means, it might mean the Island of Creatures, and it's got the most incredible video. One day I sat down once and watched it about 9 times in a row on my computer. Beautiful, aching, choral, symphonic. Sigur Ros, yeah, definitely my favorite band that are sort of newer than me and are sort of still out there doing it. I think they're incredible. I hope you enjoy these videos. Rage. What can you say about Rage? There was a famous night, me and my brother Russell smoking bongs, and we had the munchies so bad that we ate 3 loaves of toast and Vegemite, watching Rage till like 5 o'clock in the morning, just sitting there watching it, stuffing the toast, and your turn to go and make it. Rage is an absolute institution. I don't think anywhere else has anything like Rage. So it's always great. It's always great to be on Rage, and it's even greater to get to program Rage. So viva la Rage, long may Rage rule. There's a bit of alliteration there for you if you like that. So yes, you're watching Rage. Like everybody else in Australia, there was only one show on TV where if you wanted to see rock and roll during the 70s, and it was a show called Countdown, of course. And one night they had Kate Bush doing Wuthering Heights, and I don't know, she was 19 or 18 at the time. I, like everybody else, was struck by the incredible Englishness and the precocious talent, just the outrageousness of the whole damn thing, of this girl wriggling around and singing this song. All her albums are intriguing and challenging. She kicked down the doors for loads of people, I think. You know, you wouldn't have Tori Amos, a whole load. In my opinion, she showed a whole lot of other people how it could be done. Obviously, Running Up That Hill has become a runaway success. The Church even did a cover of The Hounds of Love on an EP we put out. Outrageous, precocious, genius, still going, still making great records. Kate Bush, what can you say? She's just got it all. So I hope you enjoy the ones I've picked for you tonight. Bob Dylan, what a character. Look, I went and saw him when he was in Sydney a few years back, and I walked out, and as I was walking out, a guy grabbed me and said, "Hey, you're a musician, aren't you?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Why was that so awful?" And I was just like, "That's Bob Dylan. He made the rules. He breaks the rules. He defies the rules. He's perversely terrible sometimes. I don't know if he's ever going to be what we want him to be. I think without his lyrics, you wouldn't have had John Lennon. You can hear John Lennon on You Gotta Hide Your Love Away, when he's starting to sing, like he's starting to pick up on Dylan. Dylan was the first guy to do this sort of surreal lyrical thing. I love his singing. A lot of people don't like his singing. I love his singing. I wouldn't necessarily recommend you go and see him live. He seems to be touring forever and ever and ever. And one wonders, why is he there, seeing he doesn't really seem to want to be there. But he is the greatest. Without Dylan, you're not going to have, there's so many people. He opened the door for, you know, Springsteen, all of the Donovan, all the singer-songwriters. He directly influenced the Beatles. You hear he introduced them to marijuana, and you can see everything that came out of that. Bob Dylan. I've read books and books and books. I've read his own books. I've listened to his records for hours. You just don't know what he's going to do. You can't define him. He is a real joker. And he's done it all. And here are three of my favorite Dylan songs, especially Series of Dreams, which once again, perversely, he left off any of his real albums. This incredible track. Anybody else, you'd have that as your main track on the album. Dylan left it off and it only came out on a compilation album. So here's Bob Dylan. What can you say? He's the original and the best. Jimi Hendrix. I was on an aeroplane recently and I watched an interview with Jimi Hendrix and Dick Cavett, who was a TV host, and it was like the day after Woodstock or something. And Jimi Hendrix just came across as the most beautiful, lovely sort of cat, as we say in the music business. He was a lovely cat, just an incredible talent. They say he wasn't very fond of his own voice. I really like the way he sang. Obviously, he's one of the best guitarists ever. He played upside down. He was left-handed, but instead of like McCartney and others, they get a proper left-handed. He played an electric guitar upside down and sort of allowed him to do things maybe that normal guitarists can't kind of do, because it's all upside down. An incredible writer, incredible performer. So sad that he went so soon, but definitely, I mean, they throw the word genius around, but definitely a genius. He had the looks, he had the chops, and unfortunately he had the drugs and the problems and all the stuff that comes with incredible fame. But while he was alive, he made some absolutely brilliant records. Probably Electric Ladyland is the one you should check out. It's totally psychedelic. So please enjoy Jimmy. Here he is. Pink Floyd. If someone comes up to you and says, do you like Pink Floyd? Well, that's a bit of a loaded and complicated question. To me, there's like three Pink Floyds. There's Pink Floyd with Syd Barrett, and then there was Pink Floyd up until Dark Side of the Moon, and then there's sort of Dark Side of the Moon on. I like that middle period, before Roger Waters had sort of gained his total ascendancy. It seemed like a real four-man thing, and along with Hawkwind, they were sort of pioneering space rock. Hawkwind are more like violent and rhythmic, and Pink Floyd are more like exploring sort of soundscapes, and Dave Gilmour's wonderful slide echo technique, and used to call Rick's Turkish Delight because of these sort of Eastern scales he would play. The Live at Pompeii stuff, I remember reading an interview with Johnny Greenwood, and he said that's how a band should look and sound. And Live at Pompeii, one night Richard Plug and I who was the drummer in the Church, we landed in Amsterdam and we were burned out from our flight. And we went down to this hash bar and we picked some hash out of the menu, and we sat there and they were playing the screen, on the big screen, they were playing Live at Pompeii. Dave Gilmour sitting there without his shirt on in the dust with his guitar, and we looked at each other and said, sometimes life is really good. Don't hold the stuff that came later on against Pink Floyd. This period, this middle period, Meddle and Ummagumma and Atom Heart Mother, this is some of my favorite music that's ever been made, and once again made it really possible for lots of other people to go on using these guys as a sort of a roadmap of what can be done with sort of rock and roll instruments. It doesn't have to be all Chuck Berry. And I sort of say Hawkwind and Pink Floyd together are like the two sort of main components of what became known as space rock. Hey, here's a bit of nepotism for you. Politicians do it, so why can't musicians? Say Lulu are actually my eldest identical twin daughters, Electra and Miranda, and they resisted being in the music business for a long time, just to sort of spite me and their mother, who were going, you guys should, and they were like, yeah, you'd be happy if we were in the music business, wouldn't you? And we were like, yeah, we would be. And anyway, eventually they got around to it, and they had a modeling career, and one of them's acting in a TV show called Shantaram that was on Netflix or Apple TV or something. Anyway, they made 2 really good albums. One of the tracks here really explores the idea, Nothing But a Heartbeat. It really explores the idea, it's quite long, of what it's like being an identical twin and losing the other one, and the sort of the connectedness. And you see them in their home city of Stockholm, and one of them's falling off a roof and the other one's trying to stop her from going. Very hard for me to watch that too. I get sort of, even now when I watch it, I know it's just a video, I sort of get, no, save your sister. And you see them sort of, I don't know, it's just a nice sort of thing about being, what it's like to be identical twins. You can see their breakthrough video, which is Maybe You, which was the one, they made this video and suddenly they were like, almost like instant pop stars. And another one which is called Peppermint, which is like a day in the life of these girls in Stockholm. You see them getting the bus to the studio, going in, making a song. It's kind of like a nice little insight into their world. So that's Say Lulu. The Underground Lovers, a great Australian band. I once was in America and a guy said, hey Steve, I'm going to play you an album. I'm not going to tell you who it is and you tell me what you think of it. And this was back in like, the 80s. And he put on Underground Lovers Leaves Me Blind. And I was going, I don't know who that is, but I love it. And he said, it's an Australian band called the Underground Lovers. I was like, no way. And it was. And I love the Underground Lovers. They've got energy, they've got great lyrics. I even ended up making a couple of albums with Glenn Benny called GB3, who's the guitarist and the sort of main musical guy. Highly recommended. They're still going, they're still out there, they're rocking. They're just one of my favorite things, and I always going back to the Underground Lovers. So I'm hoping you folks out there can dig the undies, as we call them, in the biz. Hugo Race, I only recently discovered when somebody handed me a copy of his most excellent book called Road Series. I thoroughly enjoyed the book. It was one of the very best rock and roll reads I've ever read. I went back and dove deep into his back catalogue. And tonight we're going to have Icy Roads and Too Dead to Feel by Hugo Race and the True Spirit. Going back even further in time, we have The Wreckery and a really great song called Ruling Energy. G'day, I'm Steve Kilbey from The Church, and you're watching the best rock and roll show on TV in Australia on the ABC, and it's called Rage. One night I was waiting to go on, I don't know what year it would have been, back whenever Jeff Buckley's first album came out. I was waiting to go on somewhere in a club in Adelaide, and this music came on, and I had never heard, I think it was Lilac Wine he was singing. I never heard such a beautiful male voice, and I felt like something had just completely wiped out. Not that I was ever trying to have a beautiful male voice, but I felt like somebody had just come along who was going to wipe out everybody else. And unfortunately, once again, we had to lose this brilliant talent so early. Highly recommend his album Grace, and the album that came after that, a strange album, Sketches for My Sweetheart the Drunk, which is sort of like, if somebody hadn't told you that it wasn't really going to be the album he was going to release, it could have been a real album and had so many beautiful songs on it, almost as good as Grace. He could write songs, he could play guitar, as I say, the best male voice ever. Jeff Buckley, why does the good Lord take all these wonderful, talented people away from us so early and leave all those awful ones still in place and rocking years later? I'll never know. But the 2 Jeff Buckley albums I've got, I listen to them a lot, and it's just wonderful spiritual stuff. I think timeless. So I hope you enjoy some Buckley. I was always going to try and get a joke in about Buckley's choice, but I'll refrain. Yeah, I'm Steve Kilbey from The Church. Thanks for joining me tonight. I'm watching Rage. Now, this isn't my idea. This is what has to happen. We're going to watch some of my stuff. And one of my favorite videos The Church have ever done is from our latest album called The Hypnogogue, and the track is called The Hypnogogue. And lately I've been working a lot with a fantastic guy up in Queensland called Clint Lewis, and he's got this company called Red Tape Pictures. And on a budget that back in the good old days, like in the 80s and 90s, would have cost $200,000 or $300,000, on quite a substantially less budget than that, this guy knocks out these wonderful videos. And here is the video of how our protagonist of this concept album, the Hypnogogue, this singer, he first discovers the Hypnogogue, and he goes in and uses this machine that drags music straight out of people's head. I think this is a marvelous video, and yeah, it was quite controversial amongst people who are into the church, and I don't know, I'd be interested to see what you make of it. This is called The Hypnogogue by The Church. Steve Kilbey from The Church here, and you're watching Rage. Hi, I'm Steve Kilbey from The Church. You're watching Rage. Happy New Year. Here's a party song for you. Jumpin' Jack Flash by Rolling Stones. Yeah, baby. Long live 2024. All right. Happy New Year.